What's up everybody, welcome back to another one of my videos. Today I'm gonna be working on this 2007 BMW 328i. I'm gonna be doing the front and the rear brakes. I'm gonna be using Akebono brake pads. These are for the rear, these are for the front, and I also got the sensors. I'm gonna replace the sensors, one for the front, one for the rear. And these are the rotors I'm gonna be using. I'm gonna upgrade them to the drill and slotted. These are for the front, and I also got another set for the rear. Okay, so I'm gonna jack it up and remove the wheels, and then I'm gonna check the condition on the old brake pads. The wheels, they're a little dusty, the front and rear, and also the brake light came on the car, so I know I need to replace them. Okay, now that the wheel is off, I'm gonna remove the caliper, and then I have to remove this bolt right here that holds the rotor in place. So I'm gonna start off by removing this cap right here and this one right here, so I can get to the bolt. And once I remove those, I'm gonna be using Torx to remove the bolt. Okay, I removed the caps now. So I'm gonna be using these T45 to remove the caliper bolts, and then the caliper should come off. But first I gotta remove this bracket right here. Okay, so I'm gonna remove the bracket. And then I'm gonna be removing the bolts. Okay, so I removed the two bolts. Now I'm gonna remove the sensor. Okay, so this is the sensor. I'm gonna put it on the side for now, and I'm gonna remove the caliper. I'm gonna remove one of the brake pads. I'm gonna leave this one for now because I'm gonna be using this one to push the piston back in. So now I'm gonna remove these two bolts that hold the bracket for the caliper, so I can remove the disc. Okay, once you remove two bolts, then you can remove the caliper bracket. Now I'm gonna remove the rotor. It's rusted, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hit it right here with a hammer, and it should break loose. Okay, so I'm gonna tap it and it should break loose. I'm gonna be careful not to hit the hub, So just on the side, there it is. Simple as that. And that's how you take it off. So I'm gonna clean up a couple of parts. I'm gonna push that piston back from the caliper, and I'm gonna get everything ready to install the new brake pads and the new rotors. Okay, so I'm gonna be cleaning the bracket and the caliper. I'm gonna put a tray underneath. So I'm gonna clean it up the best I can, and then I'm gonna be installing everything back together. Okay, after spraying the parts with brake cleaner, I'm gonna push the piston back so I can get everything ready. Usually you have to open the bleeder screw, but I'm not gonna open it because I don't want to bleed the brakes afterward. So I'm just gonna have all the fluid go back to the reservoir, and after I install the brakes, I'm gonna pump the brakes, and if it needs more fluid, then I'm just gonna add the rest. But for now, since I'm by myself, I'm not gonna be opening the bleeder screw. Okay, so I'm gonna push the piston back. So there it is, it went all the way back. Now I'm gonna remove the brake pad. Okay, now I'm gonna install the rotor. I'm gonna replace the sensor, put the new brake pads, and put everything back together. Here's the rotor I'm gonna be using. Before I install it, I'm gonna spray brake clean on the rag, and I'm gonna wipe it off. Okay, now I'm gonna install the bracket for the caliper. So I'm gonna tighten both of the bolts. Okay, so I tightened both of the bolts. Now I'm gonna put the brake pads on. For the caliper bolts, I'm gonna put some grease on the surface so that the caliper can slide in and out easily. And then I'm gonna go ahead and replace the sensor. Okay, so I installed one of the brake pads on the caliper bracket. The other one goes on the caliper. So I'm just gonna install it now. Okay, so I'm gonna tighten them all the way right now, and next I'm gonna be replacing the sensor. Okay guys, so I finished tightening the bolts, both of them. So I'm gonna put the caps back on. I put the bracket that goes on the front of the caliper. Now I'm gonna replace the sensor. So pretty much this is the sensor right here. So you remove it from this bracket and the one on the back. Then you gotta open this box right here. And you disconnect it. So it has a clip right here. So you just push the clip and unplug it. This is the old one. This is the old sensor, and I'm gonna be replacing it with a new one. This is the new sensor. I'm gonna match it with the old one, make sure it's the same. So it has the same angle. It looks about the same connector. So I'm gonna be installing this one. Alright guys, so there it is. I already connected the new sensor. Put it on the brackets. And then pushed it in the caliper and the brake pads. So now I'm gonna put the wheels back on and I'm gonna start working on the back. Okay, I'm gonna start working on the rear now. I'm gonna do the passenger side because this side has the sensor. I'm gonna start off by taking the wheel and then the caliper, then the bracket, then the sensor. And we're gonna replace the brake pads and rotor. Okay, I got the wheel off. Now I'm gonna start removing the bracket. Then it has 2 bolts on the back holding the caliper. This one, just like the front, it has dust caps, so I'm gonna remove those. Then I'm gonna remove the bolts. Then I'm gonna remove the sensor. This is the sensor right here. This right here is the sensor. I'm gonna remove the sensor. Then I'm gonna remove the bracket for the caliper. Then the rotor, and then I'll be putting a new rotor and new brake pads. Okay, I removed the dust caps, and also I loosened the bolts already. Here's one. Here's the bottom one. So the caliper should be loose. I'm gonna remove this bracket. Here's the bracket. Okay. Now I should be able to remove the whole caliper. Here's the caliper. Okay, now I'm gonna remove the sensor. I'm gonna use pliers and just try to take it out with the pliers. Here it is. I'm gonna be replacing the sensor right now. Okay, so now I'm gonna remove the bracket. It has 2 bolts on the back. So I'm gonna remove those 2 bolts and take this bracket off. Okay, so I'm gonna remove the 2 bolts from the back. And I'm gonna remove the bracket. Now I'm gonna remove this bolt right here that holds the rotor in place. I'm gonna take it off. And this rotor is rusted as well, so I'm gonna hit it with the hammer. I'm gonna tap it with a hammer, and I'm gonna try to break it loose. So I'm gonna tap it with the hammer, break it loose. Okay, now I'm gonna push the piston back, and after that I'm gonna be installing the new rotor. So I'm gonna be using the same tool to push it back. Okay, once you push it all the way back, you can just take it off, remove the brake pad. Okay, I sprayed brake cleaner to clean the parts the best I can. Now I'm gonna be installing the rotor, the brake pads, and the new sensor. Okay, so after wiping the rotor, I'm gonna install it. Then I'm gonna install the bracket. So after you tighten the bolts for the bracket, we're gonna install the brake pads and the caliper. Okay, so pretty much I forgot to mention on the front, so pretty much what you could do is put some lube. And install the brake pad. The other one's gonna go on the caliper. So the second one is gonna go on the caliper. Okay, now I'm gonna put some lube on the bolts, and I'm gonna install the bolts on the caliper. Okay, so I tightened both caliper bolts. Now I'm gonna put the bracket back on. After installing the bracket and the bolts, I'm gonna put the dust boots. Okay, now I'm gonna replace the sensor. So for this one runs. It runs to the inside of this panel. So I'm gonna be removing there's a bolt underneath right here. So I'm gonna be removing probably that bolt and this one right here on the side, this one, to get to the connector, and I'm gonna replace the sensor. Okay, so I had to remove 3 bolts after all. 1 on the bottom and 2 on the side. Actually 3 on the side and 1 on the bottom to get to the sensor. So it's this one right here. So I'm gonna disconnect it. I'm gonna grab the new one. I'm gonna connect the new one. So I'm gonna connect the new one on. Gonna put it back on the plastic bracket. I'm just gonna put the cover back on. Okay, so I installed the sensor. I routed the wire through the clips. So now I'm pretty much done. I'm gonna put the wheel back on and probably give it a wash. And I also have to turn off the light, the brake light. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the wheel back on, pump the brakes, and then reset the brake life. Okay, so I finished installing the brakes. This is how they look. They look a lot better than the old ones, and they also stop a lot better. Now I'm gonna go ahead and check the fluid level and reset the brake light. Okay, so I checked the level. The fluid level is fine. Now I'm gonna reset the brake light. So I'm gonna press the BC button. Then I'm gonna press this one. I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna press the BC again. Click reset. And there it is. Alright guys, so that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you for watching.